Hello, everyone. We are live and recording. My name is Kelly Ann, and I am a bookseller with Mysterious Galaxy. Tonight, I have the pleasure of introducing our lovely authors. We're here to celebrate not one, but two new cozy mysteries that came out yesterday. Tonight, we are hosting Daryl Wood Gerber and Rick Cobb, who you might recognize under his pen name, Lee Hollis. Daryl is an Agatha Award-winning author, best known for her Fairy Garden Mysteries, her Cookbook Nook Mysteries, and her French Bistro Mysteries. Her latest book is A Glimmer of a Clue, which is the second installment in her Fairy Garden Mysteries series. Rick is half of the brother and sister duo writing team known as Lee Hollis. His latest book that we are here to celebrate tonight is Death of an Italian Chef, which is the 14th installment in the Haley Powell mystery series. Before we get started, I pass this off and turn off my screen so that you guys can just listen to our lovely authors. A quick run of Crowdcast for those of you who haven't seen events with us before. On the right-hand side, we have the lovely general chat, which you guys have already been participating in, so you can write to our authors there and comment as the event goes on. Below our video, you'll see a green button that says Buy Books and signed and personalized book plates. You can click that and it'll take you to Mysterious Galaxy, and you can buy all the books that we discussed tonight from there. And you can also request a personalized book plate from either of the authors by writing that in your order comments. And last but not least, below that, there's the Ask a Question button, which if you click that, you can do just that. And you can type whatever question you want answered by our authors. So yeah. With that, I'm going to turn off my screen and let the event get started. Have a great event, everyone.
Bye, Kellyanne. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Daryl.
All right, so my very first question, hi there. My very first question for you is, I was wondering who that cute girl is in the picture with you that is in all your promos. And that's your sister? That's
it's
Holly?
My sister, Holly, who is the Lee half of Lee Hollis. I'm the Hollis half. Lee and Hollis are our middle names. Because we didn't want
that's so cute.
The bulkiness of two names on a book. And she's with us tonight. Hi, Holly. She's listening in.
Hi, Holly.
And so we went with Lee Hollis as our pen name, and then it's kind of grown out of that. We've done 14 Haley Powell mysteries, and then I do two other series on my own, the Poppy Harmon mysteries and the Sandra and Maya mysteries. So we've got...
But you and your sister have not broken up. You've stayed brother and sister through all of this.
I know. People ask that. We actually have gotten along... Well, ever since we were kids, we did fight a little bit when we were kids, but yeah. I think we're very close. And writing 14 books, we get this question a lot. I could never write with my brother. Or I could never write with my sister.
Yeah.
We get along, but we also separate it out. Like I'll work on the mystery and the story, and then she'll do the columns and the recipes that are interspersed. Because Haley, after all, is based on my sister. She did write a local cooking column in our hometown of Bar Harbor, Maine, and so. A lot of the characters are kind of based on people from our hometown where we grew up. So that's
that's nice. So I was saying to you, I was saying to Lee, everybody out there, I was saying to Lee, well, actually Rick.
You can call me whatever you want.
Okay. Anyway, before we
buy.
Yeah, that's right. Just remember the name of the book, the Haley Powell Mysteries. Before we got started, I said that it was interesting that, that Haley herself has grown as a blogger in the series. So in the very first, where she's just beginning as a blogger and getting her, feet wet. I just read Death of a Wicked Witch. I haven't read the new one yet. And she's, this full blown writing big pieces now that are lovely, and it switches voice. It goes into first person instead of third person, and they're so personal in there, and they're flashbacks on what has happened in her life, and they all revolve around food. By the way, I want drinks with your sister. Okay,
I'm sure she's happy right now.
I've ever heard, right? I mean, gosh, the cocktails are incredible sounding. But it's really interesting reading it from that, first to the 13th at this point that I've read. Yeah.
Oh, thank you. Because, for me, it's a joy because I live in Palm Springs and Holly lives in North Carolina. So we never see each other. So when I sit down to write Haley, I feel like I'm spending time with her because it's very much like her, and her life has evolved since the beginning of the books when she was raising kids on her own as a single mom, and now she's in a relationship, and so we just kind of like draw from real life as we move along, except we stay in Bar Harbor.
So do you kill people as well?
No, we a lot of the supporting characters are based on people we know, like the two best friends, Lydia and Mona, are definitely based on people Holly grew up with, close friends of hers. The brother who owns the bar Drinks Like a Fish is loosely based on me, had I made that state in Bar Harbor. And even the Brazilian police chief is kind of based on someone we know. So.
Oh, really? Oh, that's so great.
Yeah.
That's wonderful. People ask me, and it's like, no, I don't write about people I know. Well, that's not true. Sometimes I might change their gender and write about somebody I know, but they shouldn't know that I've written about them.
Exactly.
So it is very funny, you know, when you write characters like that, and it's like, are these really people you know? Nah, I don't want to say that they really are. I certainly don't know a fairy personally. So there's a fairy in my new series.
You, because I'm very very familiar with Jenna Hart and the Cookbook Nook Mysteries, but I am not as familiar with it's Courtney Kelly, and this is the second book. I had not. You've written suspense novels. You've done everything. You've got French Bistro Mysteries.
Yeah.
I mean, I was bowled over. So tell us about this new series, or the second in this new series.
Okay, so A Glimmer of a Clue. I'll show you the picture again because it's so cute. I love this artist. This is Pixie. This is a cat. And the little glitter here is Fiona. Fiona is a sleuth fairy, or a righteous fairy. She was kicked out of the fairy kingdom because she was too much of an imp. And in order to get reunited with the fairy kingdom, she has to grow her adult wings. The only way she can grow her adult wings is if she helps humans solve problems. So Fiona is a very small fairy. She's only about 3 inches tall. She's got gossamer hair, and she's got a blue beautiful dress and sparkly silver shoes. And she looks just like what you would think a fairy looks like. She comes to Courtney. Courtney is a fairy garden shop owner. She didn't start there. She started as a landscaper working in her father's business. And when her grandma died and left her some money, she decided she had to spread her wings and open her own fairy garden shop in Carmel. So it's a real town. It's the one, well, I write about a couple of real towns, okay? In my other 2 cozies, they're all fictionalized. All the streets are mine, everything else. But in Carmel, I figured that's where a fairy would reside, in a whole fairy community, as it turns out. So anyway, that's what I have written about is she's a little sidekick fairy. She does speak. She's still impish. She still has to grow up. She's sort of teen-ish age. And she loves working with Courtney. Courtney lost her ability to see fairies when her mother died when she was 10. And when she reopens this fairy garden shop, all of a sudden Fiona appears to her, and she can see her, talk to her, and communicate with her. And they work very well together.
So she's like a fairy Watson with Sherlock Holmes, like a little fairy Watson the mystery.
A little fairy Watson. A little fairy Watson. She's
I love it.
A sidekick. Yeah. She's definitely a sidekick. You have to suspend disbelief. But on the other hand, if you're going to read about an amateur sleuth, you're going to suspend disbelief anyway.
Exactly. Yeah.
Some people call it a paranormal. I think of paranormals a little bit scarier, not really in a cozy mystery, but those are about witches and things and stuff. This is the only fairy there is so far in cozydom. So. Yeah.
And so she runs a bookshop that has a lot of fairy.
It's not a bookshop. She runs a shop where she builds fairy gardens.
So
let me show you some. So, for example, this is a teacup fairy garden.
Oh, wow. Oh,
and it's got little fairy figurines, and it has a little story going on in it. This is one that can just be inside, and you don't have to have a green thumb for this. You can just make a little garden. But I have gardens outside in my yard. This is my whole shelf behind me. It's inspirational. But I fell in love with making fairy gardens, which is sort of doll housing for your planters and gardens.
Oh, that's
You make these little stories with little figurines and plants, and you can use succulents, you can use fake plants. It's just a bit of whimsy in your life. I'm not a crafter, but it's the one craft I found out that I can do.
Oh, that's great. And so what happens in the new book, A Glimmer of Clue? Or what, it's Glimmer?
A Glimmer of a Clue. In A Glimmer of a Clue, yep, Courtney's friend's mother. So Courtney's friend, Megan, owns an art shop. Wanda is an art representative, her mother. And her mother is found over a dead body saying, oh no, what have I done? It's the woman happens to not be liked, but the victim is not liked by anybody ever. She is one of those people that is a bully. She she is based on someone I know. So don't tell anybody. The main sport in this is pickleball. I don't know if you've heard of pickleball, but oops, let me turn that off.
I don't know what pickleball is, but I'm in suspense here.
Pickleball is like tennis on steroids or ping pong on steroids. It's half a tennis court. You use a wiffle kind of ball, and you can just wail at that thing. And it's become extremely popular because you can have smaller courts to play it. And you don't have to be as athletic as if you're doing tennis, because you're not running here to there and everything else in tennis. You've got half a court to work with. It's usually played in doubles. It plays like tennis with a racket and everything else, but it makes this wah sound, wah, 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 wah. So it just sounds funny. The victim is the pickleball champ.
Oh gosh.
and she does not like to lose to anybody. And she's hated by just about everyone. So it was fun writing her, and it was fun just solving the crime.
And does the fairy have magical abilities? Like she could be like listen in on conversations and fly around and that kind of thing?
Yes, she can listen in on things, and she can fly, and she get in small little places and stuff. What she can't do is she cannot make someone tell the truth.
Okay.
So she cannot cast a spell to make someone, because if I did that, then the book would be over on page 25. Right? And she can't ESP. She cannot read somebody's mind and say, I know they're the killer. No, she has to still work like a human in coming up with clues and solving things. And so she and Courtney do work together. They communicate well. And but she can be off doing something, and Courtney might get her own clues, and vice versa, and they will bring them back together. So again, like Sherlock Holmes and Watson, they may go off in two tangents, but they will come back together and converse and try to figure out what the clues are.
Oh, that's great.
It's been a whole bunch of whimsy, and it's complete divergence from what I have been writing, because as you've read my culinary mysteries. Yeah. My culinaries include the Cheese Shop Mysteries, which I wrote under Avery Aames, and the Cookbook Nook Mysteries. So they're all about food. French Bistro Mysteries, about food. And I threw food into this, and tea. They have teas on the weekends, so there are recipes in it. But I didn't write about magic. And to write about magic was a real divergence for me. I had to create a whole magical world, and that's been quite a challenge, whereas you're rooted in the reality of all these people that in Bar Harbor, like Holly knows, and you've built this world around people. This is all woo-hoo. I have to come up with everything that's different, and I have to keep it straight. So I've really had to create a Bible for myself of all the different rules and fairy language and fairy rules that she lives with. So now, how do you guys, so since you guys are writing, a story across country and everything else, mm-hmm. you come up with a mystery, mm-hmm. and Holly comes up with the food, the recipes, and the blogging. So, so how do you put those two together? What makes it work for you? I mean, are you plotters or pantsers? What works with that?
It took some adjustment when we started, but we always had fun writing together because, as I said before we started, Holly began as a cooking columnist, and that's kind of what our kind of sparked the idea of the whole series. And which is why we kind of base the character on her. But what we do is we'll talk together in the beginning about the general story. And actually, most of the time, we come up with the title first. What kind of recipes and food we want to eat, And,
that makes sense.
It kind of builds from there. Like in this book, Italian Chef, Holly was like, I want to do Italian recipes. I've got a pasta dish. I've got this and that. And so we came up with this story. And then I go off and write I am out of television. That was I 30 years wrote for TV. So outlines are always important to me. I like to know exactly what I'm doing. Yeah. And then I'll start, once we do the outline, I start writing the chapters, and then Holly will always wait until she gets to the point where we drop in a column. She likes to read up to that point instead of reading the whole thing. So then a lot of her stories are based on memories from our childhood. Some are obviously embellished, but a lot of them are based on truth, and so in this book, Italian Chef, Haley is eating at a new Italian restaurant in town, and there's this very gregarious chef, and he comes over because she knows she writes the column for the paper, and he wants to know what she thinks of his carbonara. And she has to admit that she thinks hers is better. And so he challenges to her contest. She comes over to the restaurant, and he admits that her carbonara is better, but then he has a heart attack and he winds up in the hospital at the same time as Haley's brother, Randy, who has a gallbladder attack, and they're sharing a room. And then during the night, one night, the chef dies, and they say it was the heart attack that did it. But Randy, who's under the influence of morphine at this point, says, "No, I saw someone come in and kill him." And so the police don't believe him because he was. The police don't believe him because he was under sedation, but Haley does, and that's what kicks off the investigation. That she's going to prove that her brother wasn't, hallucinating.
Well, and luckily it wasn't her carbonara that did it.
Exactly.
Right?
No, Haley's food never poisons anyone.
I know. It all sounds incredible. I do have to say, Holly, kudos to your food because it really is great. Do you taste test for her?
Pardon me?
Do you taste test everything that she writes as a recipe?
I'm a terrible cook. I hate to admit that, but I am, and so unfortunately I don't. She does, but we're so far apart that I don't get to try all the delicious things that she's making. So that can be a little frustrating.
That can be frustrating. It's funny because I have to eat gluten-free. And so I will make recipes and I will make them regularly and have my kids try them. And then I'll make them gluten-free so I can try them. It's a real, compilation of trying. I was living very close to my stepson and his daughter, his wife, a couple of years ago. And when we moved over to the house that I'm in now, they said, "Oh no, we're going to miss your food." I said, "No, I'll still keep bringing it over because you're still going to have to taste it for me."
It's so funny.
Who knew when we became authors that we'd also have to be chefs or know
I know.
Or know a good chef?
It's so funny because I've done these other two mystery series. One set here in Palm Springs, the Poppy Harmon series, and then another one set in Southern Maine. And there's no recipes or food in either one of those series, and I miss them. I miss the recipes. I'm like, so I'm constantly having them go to restaurants drinking wine.
Yeah, and it's interesting. Do you find that it's that your fans miss it? Do they read Haley and then say, "Well, where are the recipes in your other books?"
I think I don't think so. Just because I think the Mayan Standard mysteries, from what I can gather, seem to have a different audience, like a whole different audience, like that have discovered that book on its own without. Certainly we get a lot of the Haley Powell fans over there, but they do seem to have their own fans, both series. So
yeah, I found that for my Suspense, the same thing. The Suspense get certain readers, and they might read my cozy mysteries, but they read the Suspense because that's what they prefer. That kind of.
I'm fascinated with when cozy authors also write suspense. You Aspen Adams was the character that you wrote in the suspense novels.
Right.
Can you tell me a little bit about?
I've got to plug my. Yes. Hold on. Sorry.
Oh, well, I should plug the other one.
We're using it more energy. We're using it more energy than I thought. You see this? This is called battery time. Whoops. Okay. This is real life theater, folks. Okay, what was your question about Aspen?
I was just going to say, tell me a little more about what kind of an adjustment that must be. If you, you started writing the suspense novels first, or did you do the cozy first and move over?
Well, it's interesting. When I was first starting writing, number one, I started as a screenwriter. I did not get anything. But I didn't get anything produced. I had a TV show that I did the format for, but nothing. And then we moved across country, so I said I'll go and start writing novels. And I was writing suspense because for my screenwriting, I was writing thrillers and romantic comedies. A nice mix, right?
Oh.
but when I moved to mysteries, I thought, well, what I really love is I love long form thrillers. So I would write suspense thrillers. And I was getting, agents saying, "This is very good, but I can't sell this. This is good. I love this character, but I can't sell this." And I was really getting very frustrated. And then I I met an agent who said, and a friend of mine said, how about writing cozy mysteries? And I read them. I just hadn't thought about it. And so I met an agent who said, well, if you can send me some cozy mystery ideas, maybe I could sell one of those. So I sent her some, and she goes, oh, this is cute, but I can't sell it. This is cute, but I can't sell it. I got really stuck. And then she called me and she said, do you think you could write about cheese? And I said, I think I could. I knew a little bit about cheese. I knew
cheese.
mozzarella and Monterey and cheddar, So I got the opportunity to audition to write the cheese shop mysteries. And that's why I started writing cozies. I fell into food, and I was a caterer. I waitressed. I've cooked all my life. I sold pies around the neighborhood when I was a little girl. So I've always been a cook. And so going from the cheese shop mysteries into then the Cookbook Nook Mysteries, that was just a natural transition to write mysteries, but I still missed my suspense. And so I found a small publisher who said, yes, I like this character. Go ahead. If you'll do 2 of them, I will do 2 of them. And so I dusted off one of the suspense that I was just really enamored with. I loved the story still. It was probably the 3rd book that I ever wrote. And I rewrote it completely. I stripped it until it was a better book. And that was the first one in Aspen Adams series. And there are 3 in the series. So it's a completely different hat. When I write suspense, it's a different tone. It's a different sentence structure, or lots of different verbs that I use. The pace is different. The chapters are shorter. We don't get into food very often. So,
Yeah.
It's different, but I like writing both genres. I really enjoy it. And the fans that have gotten behind my suspense really enjoy it. But I do have to say, my cozy mystery fans are my stalwart, supporters, and I should probably stay in my lane. Who knows?
That's great.
Who knows? I do enjoy it. I do enjoy it. So now, okay, so I want to ask, what is next for Haley?
We
Do you
are.
have another book coming up for
Yes,
this one?
we have one right now we're working on called Death of an Ice Cream Scooper. So it's going to be all ice cream recipes. And
Yay, I'll offer you some. I make ice cream.
and so we're doing shakes and desserts and so everything ice cream in the next book. We're actually handing it in this month, or next month.
Oh, great.
Yeah. So it should be next year. And what about you? Are you doing a third? Are you doing a third?
The third
Fairy Garden?
Yeah, the 3rd one's turned in. It's a hint of mischief. So everything, the first one's a sprinkling of murder, a glimmer of a clue, a hint of mischief. I really, I love coming up with titles, and luckily they're taking them, which is nice. A hint of mischief comes out next, either June 30th or July 1st, whatever that last Tuesday of the month is. And it's about a 40-year-old woman whose sorority sister is turning 40 as well. And so she wants to have a party for her sorority sisters, and she wants to have a party, an adult fairy party. So it's the first time Courtney has done some parties for children. It's very easy to have fairy parties with little wings and things and stuff for little girls. But to do an adult one is different. And so you throw in some cocktails, and you throw in some good appetizers, and you throw in a few party fun and one murder. And it's one of the sorority sisters who is just a beloved actress, and she comes to town, but she does have a fit of a little tizzy with a girl that Courtney really enjoys. And the girl was seen in the vicinity of this actress's rental home. So did she or did she not do it? Courtney and Fiona will be on the case.
That sounds like a lot of fun.
Yeah. Now I wanted to tell. I saw someone write, about fairy gardens, because she's loving fairy gardens, and I just wanted to tell some of the people out there really a little bit more about fairy gardens, if that's okay.
Sure.
A fairy garden is. Well, I've got a whole fairy garden out in my nook, but these little fairy figurines, I fell in love with them when I went to a Renaissance fair, and I saw this woman create these fairy gardens. They have little lights, and there was just such charisma to each of them, and I felt like there was a real good vibe from them. And so I went to a little store that wasn't far from me, and I bought some items, and I started making a fairy garden. And and I was telling this little story between these characters, and that's when I realized that maybe this would be something I could write. But they're lovely because they are moments of whimsy for people to just get into their garden and feel like there's a good spirit coming from them. And if you believe in fairies, all the better.
That's great.
That's my 2 cents about fairy gardens. So who is your favorite secondary character in any of your books?
I have to say, well, I have a special place in my heart for Haley's two best friends, Mona and Liddy, because they are based on two women who I grew up with and know very well. But I also, in the Poppy Harmon series, Poppy, I don't know if you're familiar with the series. She's an ex-actress from the 80s, and she opens up a PI business because she was on a PI show in the 80s.
Good. I'm gonna read this. Okay.
With her two best friends, Iris and Violet. So they're so it's Poppy, Iris, and Violet, so the Desert Flowers Detective Agency, and it's Remington Steele because no one will hire them. You know, they're ageist, and they're like, no, we want a strong man, or so they bring on this actor to be kind of Matt Flowers, the head of the agency. Yet they're doing all the work, and he's just a dumb actor. But he does help out, and as the books progress, he's getting smarter and smarter. So, but there's a character, Iris, who's a very stern German woman who's friends with Poppy, and she's based on a woman I met here in Palm Springs named Brigitte, who's now sadly moved back to Munich. But I adore this character. I love writing her, and I have to be careful. I start to give her too much to do, and Poppy kind of loses focus. So I have to bring her back in, you know.
Does she need her own series, maybe?
I would love it, yeah. She scares people, though. That's the thing. She's so forthright and stern and forward and never holds anything back. But I think she'd scare a lot of people. But in small doses, she's a character.
Yeah, but she has no filter. I totally get it.
What about you?
Get it.
You for a secondary character?
Well, I have to admit, I've fallen in love with Fiona. But I have in each of my books, I've written a sidekick that I've really enjoyed. In my cheese shop mysteries, I had Rebecca, who worked in the shop, and she's a little skinny colt of a thing, and she had not a mouth on her. She was Amish, but she was coming out of her shell to find that she didn't just want to follow the Amish way, and so for her, because it was set in Ohio, and for her, she was finding she just could say things that people would sort of be stunned because they were so forthright for someone who should be shy and reserved and walk around, you know, just nodding and being, you know, docile. And she wasn't. So I loved her. And I've sort of given that to, in my Jenna Hart book, I've got Bailey, and Bailey can get in trouble. It's her best friend, and she works in the shop, and she can get Jenna in trouble because she'll say, let's go. And Jenna's like, you know, that's really not the right thing. And the police don't want us to. Yeah, but if I go in, you're going to follow me. And so Bailey will be, you know, will run headlong into things, and is a good enough friend to know that two together is stronger than one by themselves. So, and I think that with Fiona, it's the same kind of thing. Sometimes she will fly headlong into something, and Courtney sort of has to trot to keep up, you know. So it's, I love that interaction between characters, you know. Someone said, does your fairy talk? And I said, sure, she talks. Oh, I said, yeah, she talks just like a human being. She's got the whole thing. And she even has a dialect, which, by the way, I'm creating. That's sort of been fun. I'm using Old English mixed with Faith and Begara. I mean, you know, it's like I've got a couple of sentences that she's saying, and it's like, I better write these down because I'm not going to remember them later. So she says things, and Courtney is trying to learn fairy language. So this is good.
That's great. That's great.
Yeah, it's fun. So what authors inspired you?
Well,
now?
It's so cliche to say, but I grew up reading Agatha Christie. I loved Agatha Christie. I loved the Hardy Boys. I read every single Hardy Boys mystery there was, and Nancy Drew. I liked them both. So yeah, and then from there, you know, I got into television early. I started writing sitcoms, and my first show was The Golden Girls, way back. I was a child.
Bravo!
And
Bravo!
so I was in that world, and I was writing comedy like I wrote the Brady Bunch movie. I wrote all these like big comedies, and I my passion was as a child was Heart to Heart, Macmillan and Wife, Charlie's Angels, all the crime shows, and I always had this passion for mysteries, and so I finally. I just finally wrote a mystery novel way back for Kensington back in 2003, and did it like a trilogy that was very Hollywood based, but I've actually forgotten the question.
The question was what authors have inspired you?
Right. So it was but it was my love of mysteries that got me into writing more mysteries.
Into writing mysteries.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that's fascinating. I love that. I too was an Agatha Christie person and read all the Nancy Drew. I wasn't a reader until I got the measles. I was 9 years old. I was, trained on Dick and Jane or whatever. And I got the measles and had to stay home. And my mom was a working mom. And so she gave me her 37 books of Nancy Drew. And she said, maybe you could read one of these and they'll keep you busy. And I read all of them in a week.
Yeah, wow.
And I mean, it was amazing because I fell in love with the idea of a mystery. Solving things really made a difference to me. So yeah. I think that's great.
There was another series I was obsessed with, and it was called Alfred Hitchcock's Three Investigators. And it was these three teenage boys who basically worked for the film director Alfred Hitchcock and would like solve these crimes that he would like put them onto. And I'm a huge Hitchcock fan. I love thrillers. That's why I was so interested to hear about Aspen Adams and those suspense novels, because I just love Hitchcock and all of that. But,
yeah, no, I would totally agree. I'm a suspense person. I do like turning the page. I like to, but I love reading. I love reading cozy mysteries, which is why I've got a lot of friends who are cozy mystery authors because I read all their books. I love them. Krista Davis, I read, and Ginger Bolton, and Peg Cochran. Yeah.
Daryl,
Jen McKinley.
We have a question from Chris.
Okay, we got some questions.
Daryl, do you know how many books you will be writing in this series? I'm assuming the Fairy Garden series.
Wouldn't that be nice to know? I don't know. This is okay. So that's an interesting question. This is at the whimsy of publishers. Some people have asked me why the Cheese Shop Mysteries stopped, because the publisher decided to trim back on all their mysteries at the time. It's not my current publisher. And then the French Bistro Mysteries stopped after 2 because the publisher decided that just wasn't something they wanted to pursue any further. And it's like, okay. And it did fine, but they just didn't want to. And now I've got this one. It's like, okay, I'd like to write 12 or 14 of them, but it will be up to the publisher. It's all about sales. They're in a business. They can love us. They can love us to pieces as authors. They can think we do great crowdcast conversations, but we have to sell books. And in order to do that, we need people to tell about our books and to fall in love with our books, and for lots of people to buy our books. That's the only way that I will get more out of this contract. So I'm crossing my fingers that the books will do well, because I would like to write more of them. I've submitted 2 new proposals to the editor, and we'll see, my publisher, and we'll see what she says.
That's great. Fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed.
These events, like the Mysterious Galaxy, have been wonderful. I mean, I know it started out of a terrible place with the pandemic, but I feel like I've been able to connect with more readers this way than ever. Because you do you go and when you do them virtually, there's no limit, and there's no, people don't have to travel or drive or get a babysitter or whatever it is. They can just log on and we can have a conversation. It's great. I love them.
Right. Exactly. Okay. There's another question here for both of us. Which scene or book, since you have both have established series, give you the most joy to write? All. I love writing. I just love writing. So when I start writing, I love being whatever book I'm reading, whatever book I'm writing. That's sort of a cop-out answer, I know, but I do love it.
I have to say, and this is shameless promotion. But in the new Poppy Harmon and the Pillow Talk Killer book, they're shooting a remake of Palm Springs Weekend in Palm Springs, and there's a murder on the set, and Poppy investigates, and she acts again. And since she hasn't acted again since she was in the TV show called Jack Colt P.I., where she played the Secretary Daphne in the 80s. And I just loved writing the scenes on the film set because it brought me back, and it was like, it's been a little while. I've been in Palm Springs for a while, and it was such a joy, and it all came back to me, all the details and the PA and the craft services and all of that. It was a lot of fun to be able to like get into that world again and be in complete control of it. You know.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, that's so great. That's so great. All right, we got another question here. Just love that you both include recipes in your series. How do you find such unique and tasty offerings that are relatively easy to make? Well, okay, so this is an interesting thing because we already know that Holly is the cook in Lee's family. So we'll let Holly answer.
Feel free to answer that question, Holly. I know she's here.
In the meantime, so in my Cookbook Nook Mysteries, this is interesting, but Jenna, I decided to make her not a cook. She was a gourmet. She loved food, but as she was growing up, her mother did all the cooking, and so she didn't learn to cook. And so as she comes into the Cookbook Nook, and she's got all these wonderful cookbooks to deal with and look at, and recipes and everything else, she starts to learn 5-ingredient recipes. And it's a great way to teach her. And the chef that's at the Nook Cafe, Katie, teaches her that you can make 10-ingredient recipes if you split them up into 2 5-ingredient recipes, and then you put them together. So it's a great way for me to, my daughter-in-law was not really a cook, and I got her a 5-ingredient recipe book, and now she's becoming a great cook. She's really taking challenges. And my stepdaughter, also not a cook, and I got her a 5-ingredient recipe book. But as to the rest of the question, I've always been a cook. And like I said, I catered. And so I will test recipes. I will go into my recipe books and I will tweak them to make them mine. I'll go online, find a recipe and see how I can tweak it and make it mine. I love throwing spices into things, and I love taking spices out of things. So recipes are just fun and another creativity that I really enjoy doing. So how about you, Lee? You said you're not a cook, but...
Well, I mean, like I said, it all starts with the title, and then oh wait, Holly did answer because I just love food. Mm-hmm. I can't go through a day without thinking about a recipe. So our titles inspire her and me, and I love to cook, so I too tweak any recipe to my taste. And she does, she always adds her own flair to it. But I'm sorry, Daryl. All I've been able to think about since we started is now I want to do a book about death of a cheese something. I love.
There you go. Death of a cheesehead. There's your title.
Cheese head, cheese queen, whatever.
cheese head, and have somebody from Michigan come to
Wisconsin, from Wisconsin.
Come to Bar Harbor. Yeah. You know, it's funny because when I did, we'll talk about research for a second. And when I was researching cheese, just to get that first book started, I tested like 50 cheeses just so I could learn more about cheese. And I went and talked to cheesemongers and I tried all sorts of cheese recipes. And over the course of the 7 books that I wrote for that series, I must have tasted 1,000 cheeses.
Oh, that's heaven. That's heaven to me.
For me. It was just horrible.
Yeah.
And I still came out loving cheddar best. I mean, there are just some marvelous cheddars. So I love an Irish cheddar. But but Death of a Cheese something is going to be a good title. So
one of my most favorite road trips ever was in the UK, driving to Cheddar, England.
Yeah.
Actually, in the town where they came up with cheddar cheese.
Yeah. Yeah. So now, hey, do you and Holly do research for your books, or Holly must for the food? Well, what do you research?
Usually if there's the mystery involves a creative way that somebody dies, I try to research. I try to be as accurate as possible. You know, with the Haley Powell mysteries, I know Bar Harbor so well. It's where I was born and raised, that it's second nature to know the time and place and to set the mood and all of that. And then the characters are so familiar to me. And like I said before, like when I write Haley, it's like hanging out with my sister, because she's very much based on her. And and so the other books I do tend to have to research a little more, just because, especially the Maya and Sandra mysteries, because Sandra's husband's a senator, like in politics. Oh. That's a whole different world that I kind of have to like research, especially now, because the one I'm working on now is called Murder on the Class Trip, where they're the chaperones on a class trip to DC, and there's a murder, and so I have to like. I'm not that familiar with DC, so I've been there only a few times, so I have to do a lot of research in terms of hotels, and restaurants, and things like that. So
yeah, Google Maps help with that, doesn't it?
Yeah, and especially Yelp and all those things.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, we do have 2 more questions. We're going to look at those questions because I think they were pretty good ones. Do either of us have writing routines or rituals? My ritual is get butt in chair as early as I can. Try not to look at Facebook or anything like that, and do the writing I need to do. I do work with an outline like you. Screenwriting helped me figure out that I needed an outline. So I refer to my outline all the time. And my ritual is trying to get at least 3 or 4 solid hours of writing a day. I don't always do it, but that's my attempt.
Yeah, I'm very similar. Like we both talked about outlines. I think they're so important. But I do try, like I do go to Starbucks in the morning. I do have the coffee and read the headlines, and I love reading books. That's my time to read books. But then I am in my chair at like 9:30, and I try to get a chapter done a day until lunch. So my reward is lunch. Again, food related. And then the afternoons I kind of spend working on outlines or new plots or things like that, or different projects. But the actual writing, I'm a morning person. I got to do it in the morning.
So a chapter a day, does that mean you can write a book in like 6 weeks?
I take 3 months. I try to take 4 months to write. Because some days, I have an appointment, things don't. I try to do 4 chapters a week. I try to do four chapters a week. But yeah, 3 to 4. The Haley Powells are great because I can write one in 3 months because Holly's we're doing it together. So there's
there's
a lot more columns coming in. So but yeah, the Pappy Harmons take like 4 months to get through a draft, usually 3 to 4.
Right. Yeah, that's about what it takes for me, is about 4 months to get through a draft, and then I set it aside, work on something else.
Right.
And then I'll come back to it, look at it fresh, and do an edit or 2 or 3 or 4, sometimes 10. And in the meantime, you might get, and this is interesting for those of you who might not be are writers or whatever, or thinking about it. You'll be writing this, but then you'll get edits about the other book, and you have to sort of push all this aside and do the edits on that, turn it in, and then push that aside, go back to what you were reading. And that's why an outline for me really helps, because then I can read my outline, bring myself back up to date to where I was, and start from my page that I wrote start here on, so that I can start fresh again, even though it felt like a choppy routine. It's not like we get fluidity when we're writing this stuff, because life does intervene.
Yeah,
right? Other edits.
Certainly, yeah.
And PR intervenes.
Rewriting is great because I've written a draft and gone back through it and realized I named a character something else midway through the book. It's like you really have to go back and like pour over those pages and try to catch every little thing.
I will tell you, one of the things you don't want to do is ever name somebody Ed and then do a global change, because you have changed every verb in your
book. You're right. Oh my God, I never thought about that.
And you don't ever want to write Ed said. You don't want to write Ed said, Ed said, or Fred said.
Ed moaned. Ed growled.
I named a character Simon, and it was Simon Said. And I went through, I didn't want to change his name. So I went through the entire book looking for anything that said Simon Said, so that I could change it to some kind of action. So it never in the book says Simon Said.
Oh, that's great. I love it.
Isn't that funny? Yeah, little things.
So I don't know if people know this, but Daryl has special cred in the cozy world because you appeared on Murder, She Wrote with Angela Lansbury.
Yes, I did. I did. I was an actress before I was a writer.
Mhm.
And I did a couple of things. I did Heart to Heart.
I know. I saw that one. That about bowled me over right there. I loved Heart to Heart.
I did Matlock, and I did Murder, She Wrote. And Angela Lansbury was one of the pros of the century. And in Heart to Heart, I was standing next to Ray Walston, who was so cute because I was really young at the time. And he grabs my shoulders and he goes, "Come over here and stand really close to me. You'll get more camera time." How sweet is that, right? Well, because I was a reporter with like one line, but stand next to me and you'll get more camera time.
Oh, that's wonderful. Interestingly enough, I was a writer at Universal Studios in the 90s. And my office was between Angela Lansbury's production company and Sean Cassidy from the Hardy Boys. So my head was ready to explode. I was so excited. But every time she would show up at the office, I would pretend to be leaving so I could run into her and say, "Oh, hello." She must have thought, "Who is that crazy person?"
She was so lovely. I mean, I had a nice scene with her, and she did not have to be on camera, but she stood on the other side of the camera to read all her lines properly. It could have been a script person.
Wow.
No, she wanted to be there. Number one, she's taller. So she wanted my eyes looking the right, direction this way. But she wanted me responding to her rhythm and whatever. She was just delightful.
Now,
it was a nice experience.
You appeared in Beauty and the Beast, which was Whit Thomas production company, which I worked at the same time. Yes. We could have met and not know.
We could have met. Yeah, I had a nice career as a commercial actress. I sold a lot of candy bars and things like that.
That's wonderful.
But when it came to TV and stuff, it never got the big breaks. And then we moved across country. My husband worked for ESPN. So we moved across country, and I realized at that point that I, had to sort of hang up my acting. I did local theater in Charlotte, North Carolina, and had a great time doing that. I love being on stage. But writing became my passion, and writing is where I've found my longevity. So, it was nice. I missed the acting.
The cozy world is lucky to have you.
That's so sweet. Thank you. Thank you. Let's see. Okay, one other question here is: are you reading anything that's really special to you right now, or something on your shelf that you can't wait to read?
I have one. Next up on my reading list is I am a huge fan of Anthony Horowitz. And I don't know if you know, but his new one, The Moonflower Murders, it's been out for a while, but I haven't had the chance to read it yet. I read the first one, The Magpie Murders, which is a kind of a book within a book. It's brilliantly written. I love his young adult books he wrote, the Alex Stryker.
Stryker books.
Yeah, but these are just so well done, and for any mystery fan, cozy or otherwise, they will love these books. And so I'm very excited to read his next one, The Moonflower Murders.
Nice. A friend of mine, Hannah Dennison, also an author, she told me about him. I'd never read his books, and I do some on Audible so I can walk my dog, and I listen to one. You've got to listen to the voice that narrates his books, because it's this beautiful British voice that just had me melting. So I think I'm going to have to read him in Audible only, because it really did have me going. It was a great voice. The next, I've got a book on my to be read pile, but it's because I have read it. It's it's the Marsh King's Daughter. It's a very dark suspense. But this is such a good story. My friend Karen Dion is a lovely writer, and a bunch of years ago she did great, but she hung up her pen because she just wasn't getting traction in the publishing world like she'd wanted to. And she wrote two beautiful starting books. And when she hung it up, she and I just kept contact and everything else. And I ran into her at BoucherCon a couple of years ago. BoucherCon is a conference for writers and fans, and I said, "So what's going on?" She said, "Well, I told her that I'd read her book because it just came out a couple years ago. And I said it was phenomenal. And she said, "Well, I got to tell you, I broke all the rules on that and it sold at auction, and it's a whole change in career. And she waited like 8 years to write that book. And
Wow.
it's just made a whole new career for it. Daisy Ridley is starring in the movie. It's
Well,
already in production. I mean, it was just a great story. So if anybody's into a dark story, it is dark. I will warn you. A Marsh King's Daughter, Marsh King's Daughter is
Marsh King's Daughter.
Marsh King's Daughter. It was great.
And you
And
can
the other
find
book
it at
that I
Mysterious Galaxy because they just put up the link.
Yes, you can.
As well as Moonflower Murders.
You can, absolutely. Yes. Yes. And if you like cozies, I just finished. She's going to cut us off in a second. I just finished the Diva Search for Big Fruit, and it's by Krista Davis, and I love her writing. They make me laugh, they make me smile, and they got delicious recipes in them.
I met her recently. We did a group cozy thing together, and she was lovely, lovely woman.
Oh, great, yeah. One of my dear friends, but I love her work. So. Anyway, I think we're getting cut off here, guys.
You guys had plenty of time. I hopped on a little. I jumped the gun just a little bit.
No worries.
You guys are totally fine. Thank you guys so much for joining us tonight. This was a lot of fun. As we can all tell, the evening has done that light thing. We were talking, for the audience, we were talking in the green room how you start events in Southern California in the sunlight, and then at the end of it, you're like, oh, everything's dark.
I'm dark. I'm all dark.
Yeah.
So yeah. But thank you, and thank you to our lovely audience for tuning in. Just as a reminder, one more time, you can buy both of the books that were discussed tonight by clicking that green Buy Books and Sign Personalized Book Plates button, and I'll take you to Mysterious Galaxy if you want either of your book plates to be personalized from either Rick or Daryl. Just write that in your comments when you complete your order, and we'll get that sent to you guys. And then any other books, the books that were just discussed too at the end, have also been linked in the chat so that you guys can find them easily. Thank you one more time, and have a good night, everyone.
Thank you. Bye, Daryl. Bye, Kelly.
Thank you for having us. Goodbye, Lisa.